Hello and welcome to episode 38 of the unofficial SAP on Azure video podcast. Today is April 22nd, and together with Goran and Robert, we are here to talk about anything related to SAP and Microsoft. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
So, a few weeks ago, there was a very interesting presentation about how Microsoft utilizes Azure and the Zero Trust security for SAP at an SAP Insider event. This presentation got a lot of fantastic positive feedback and showed in a very comprehensive way what you need to do and what options are available to protect your SAP environment on Azure. So I'm very happy that Evren agreed to join our podcast today and take us with him on a security tour with SAP on Azure. But as always, before we go there, let's quickly look at the news from this week. So let me share my screen. And I actually want to start with a new announcement of a new M-Series. So we have now some new medium memory virtual machines. So remember our M-Series, they go up to 12 terabytes of memory. Obviously very good for SAP HANA workload. And now we have some new M-Series available that fit the gap here between, I actually forgot, I think low terabyte sizes to 4 terabytes. They are also Cascade Lake or based on Cascade Lake processors. So I think it's just another piece of our broad range of certified M-Series for SAP HANA workload. The next thing, I think Goran Group brought this up, and we talked about the Azure Monitor for SAP solutions already in the last few meetings. I think we had Ram on the call talking about the new SAP NetWeaver provider that is there. And Goran, yeah.
So this is one extra part which talks about SAP solution HA Cluster. Cluster here means Linux pacemaker cluster, right? And Linux pacemaker, in Azure, it's kind of quite popular. It's also kind of quote unquote unofficial standard solution on Linux, unofficial, yeah. It's used here, basically it's listed, we are using, like, for example, for HANA, for SAP Central Services, IBM DB2, and maybe if they use a highly available NFS on SLES, this is also an resource type which is basically used to protect single point of failure. Currently, in the moment, is SLES 15, SLES 15 or 12, and other OS, meaning Red Hat, would come, but still really nice, useful stuff to get also the visibility of the Linux pacemaker cluster, the nodes and states and the issues if would happen from the Azure portal, right? So again, here comes that single pane of glass with also, as you can see here, the details of the resource itself, like SAP MNT or NFS, or depends on the resource type, or HANA as well. So definitely a valuable piece. Again, people always talk about single pane of glass as a kind of ideal world, like ideally to put everything into one pane of glass. So it goes into that direction, and people, everybody are warmly welcome to try it.
Yeah, and I think especially as you said, combined with the other providers that we have to really get insights into your NetWeaver system, the HANA monitoring and all this kind of stuff. I think, as you said, this really becomes a beautiful one shop or one place to go to really get a good overview of what's happening in your SAP landscape.
Exactly, yeah. So that you don't have to jump between the different tools, between different authorizations, and on one place.
Yeah, cool. So obviously these are all virtual machines, and if you want to see where these virtual machines run, then obviously we have all these data centers around the globe, and I think some of us were lucky enough that before COVID-19, we were able to visit these data centers with customers, and I think that is really always impressive. But obviously, this doesn't scale, and now with COVID-19, it's even more challenging or not even possible to visit these data centers. So what we have done, what Microsoft has done now is there's a virtual data center tour. So if you go to this URL, well, you see a data center here. Obviously, you see different components that make up such a data center. And then what's really nice is you can really go into these data centers. So you really can follow the tour that you would normally do if you actually really go on site. So obviously you go to the lobby, and yeah, there are some security checks, and this is nicely rendered, so you can really take a look. There's also typically some documentation what is happening here, and you can then really go into the server room, into the networking room. You can really go around and get some information on how an Azure data center looks like. There are also again interviews of the colleagues that really work in these data centers, and they talk about their experience. They talk about what is important. Here, for example, you see from the data center in Dublin, Ronan, and you can play an audio, and he talks about what's happening there. So I thought, again, COVID-19, we cannot really go anywhere, but it's nice to have this virtual experience. Apparently, actually, if you have a virtual reality headset or something like that, you can also really use this in combination here with this website. So if you have an Oculus or something like this, then I think that's certainly something that you can check out.
Cool, impressive.
Very impressive. Yeah. Good. The next thing, Tobias Hofmann from Bridging IT has written a nice blog post about SAPPHIRE Now 2021. I think we talked about the announcement of SAPPHIRE Now already last time. And what he has created, he has basically created a wish list. Like, these are the things that he would like to see in SAPPHIRE 2021. And I thought there are a lot of things that I really agree with, that are very that I'm fully in line. I mean, here we talk about a free tier for the business technology platform. I mean, right now, you might know there's a 1-year trial model, more or less, where you can renew every 30 days, which is good. He talks about a nice the business application platform, which I also thought was really interesting. So really that SAP should focus on the business value, the business applications that run on top of this framework, which I thought was really interesting. Obviously, SAP RISE, cloud company. He talks about no code. Obviously, we know that SAP acquired quite a lot of products. There's a lot of mixture right now. He also brings in here the combination with Microsoft or SAPPHIRE. So obviously that's, if you look at the Power Platform, something that is certainly interesting. Again, there are really some really great topics in there. He also mentions learning, and those of you who follow him on Twitter, you know that he has some very strong opinion when it comes to learning. And actually, that's a nice bridge to the next topic that I wanted to highlight, and that is on learns.microsoft.com on the learning side of Microsoft. There was a new module announced that's all about Kubernetes, how you can run Kubernetes services on Azure, how this can be done, and it's a nice course that, I mean, it's a self-paced course, obviously, so you can learn what is Helm, you get some information there, so there's a lot of theoretically information, but then and that's really, and this is not unique to this specific exercise, but what I really love about these units is that you can test them, you can do exercises in these modules, and you don't need to have an Azure subscription for this. You don't even need to have a trial Azure subscription. So if you go to azure.com/free, obviously you can subscribe to an Azure subscription. But in these learning modules, you don't even need to do that. It's really embedded in here. So I'll just wait for a few seconds here. So you can see I tested this already this morning, and I have only 1 hour remaining, but still, without me doing anything basically, I mean, I needed to log on with my Microsoft user, but then I have here the instructions, and in a second here on the right hand side, I should really see the Azure Cloud Shell. So I can do all the steps here. I don't know, run this command to get my subscription ID, then pull some data from GitHub via wget and stuff like that. So this is really something that you can do directly in the browser. And again, you don't need anything. And that's for me something really, really impressive, really powerful, where you can really learn and exercise what you're doing here.
Wow, well, I'm impressed as well, just seeing for the first time, really.
Yeah. So let's just do this. So here's the code. Please run these commands, and now if I copy and I copy and paste this here, then for example here, now we are really executing these things in a temporary subscription, and yeah, you can see a lot of things are happening. And again, here is the documentation, and obviously throughout the learning course, there are additional things that you can do and immediately test out. Okay, so with this, only one thing left while here Azure Cloud Shell is running. You might remember we had Etienne on the show a few months back, where he was talking about a hackathon that he was doing together with Leon and some colleagues on the SAP side. This was a partner hackathon where it was all about use the business technology platform, use Microsoft Azure, and then build something out of this. Well, the beautiful thing is they are repeating this hackathon, this SAP and Microsoft Innovation Hackathon. So obviously there are a few requirements, but if you are interested, you can register. There's a process to check if you can actually participate and stuff like that. But if you are interested, then yeah, just give it a try. So you can register till May 3rd, and then yeah, there are some milestones when the hackathon starts, when you then create your application, when you submit it, and then obviously there's similar like last time, there are some winners announced. So if you wanted to do this, if you have an SAP practice, if you have an Azure practice, then I think participating here definitely makes sense. Good. So with this, again, I'm really happy that Evren volunteered and we could convince him to join the Azure podcast. Yeah, maybe without any additional introduction from my side, maybe over to you. Please introduce yourself, and then maybe
definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
I'm looking forward to your presentation.
Yeah, definitely. Let me share my screen, and then we can go from there. All right. So I think that you guys can now see my screen.
Yes.
In full capacity. Yeah. Okay. So first, thank you guys. Thank you, Goran, Holger, and Robert, for this opportunity that I'm actually just meeting with you guys, and then the community, SAP on Azure community, and then people who would like to learn about SAP and then how Microsoft treats SAP on Azure. So one of the key elements that we are looking at is the SAP on Azure security. So before I go deep dive into that and what exactly it is, I am just going to be introducing myself and then get this started. So my name is Evnre Buyruk. I'm a Senior SAP on Azure Cloud Solution Architect from Microsoft Partner Success Team Organization. So I am a SAP Certified Consultant. I'm also Microsoft Certified across SAP AI, DevOps, Azure Administration, Azure Security, and I also hold certifications from CompTIA. And then I have been learning Azure Security since I have joined Microsoft 2.5 years now. And I still constantly just learn new technologies, and it is growing very fast, and it sometimes is becoming very challenging to actually just get to the bottom of everything that Microsoft has in this field. So what I'm going to be doing today is talking to you about what Microsoft does around securing customers' SAP applications in public cloud, which is Microsoft Azure Cloud. So before, again, I go deep dive, I am just going to go gradually into the security aspect from networking perspective, and then I am gonna drill down identity access management solution, and which is going to be actually just showcasing the overall holistic view of Microsoft's approach on security. So first and foremost, that Microsoft Azure helps our customers gain unmatched security. And we are investing more than $1 billion a year and employ more than 3,500 security experts to protect the customers' information today. So our team track trillions of signals every day across every Microsoft products and responds with security updates and offerings that we use to protect our software, and we make available to customers via Azure Security Services. So Microsoft Security Promise has 3 components. So the first component is the secure foundation of Azure. This is all the security that Microsoft provides in the physical data centers, which Holger actually just showcased in the amazing visualization. So what we do is we provide this physical infrastructure from structural security to biometrics security to infrastructure such as preventing DDoS attacks to operational security, which provides the minimum just-in-time access for the minimum number of employees. So we have the second pillar, which is the built-in security. So Microsoft solutions include built-in security controls across a breadth of services, across identity, network, compute data, and apps that enable comprehensive threat protection and security management. So we make sure that our customers understand that it is very important that our clients, customers use these native tools like the Azure Security Center that is going to help improve their security posture, which is going to be very quickly adoption. And we're also asking our customers to go through our portfolio to understand how much Microsoft has been investing in the last 10 years around security, not only SAP, but also non-SAP or any IT workloads or any kind of application development on Azure, from dev, sandbox, test, all the way to production environments. So we have the third pillar, which is is actually the finalization, because Microsoft offers threat protection, which is informed by literally trillions of diverse signals and from variety of sources. So we receive every day from variety of sources like that, more than 1.2 billion devices scanned, or more than 750 million plus devices every day. So Azure User Account Authentications, for example, is one of the components that is adding to the overall holistic view and then alert notification receipt from the devices that Microsoft has been leveraging. So again, this is something just a starter, but it is not is actually not everything. It is going to be more than that. But from the holistic point of view, this is how Microsoft actually just looks at that, is the topic within each and every component Microsoft has been developing is really focusing on innovation and modernization. So for example, when Microsoft treats the cloud-based security controls for SAP on Azure, everything that you guys actually just see in this slide is not only encompassing the SAP security, but also it is looking at and focusing on non-SAP workloads as well. So within each solution area, our customers need to manage multiple security categories to effectively reduce their risks. So the average enterprise today employs around 70 plus vendors for their security today. So managing that complexity can really lead to gaps in coverage, limited visibility, and fragmented experiences. In contrast to this, Microsoft has been offering a unified approach that has been leveraging both best-in-class depth and breadth, and we're also bringing in these categories together into one solution that natively integrates individual layers of security. Organizations can actually just use all these innovations to improve these end user experiences and decrease security operation efficiencies and reduce the risk of costly data breaches. So additionally, we can help these customers to significantly reduce procurement costs. So again, overall view is very holistic, actually. It can be treated differently by any customer in any industry, but our approach is the same. We got the identity access management, application and data security, network security, threat protection, and security management. These 5 components are forming the holistic understanding of the cloud security. And Microsoft treats this very carefully, and we focus on this every day. So nothing is actually just missed. So we are not leaving any solutions alone, or we are not treating one solution less than the other one, because it is very important to cover all these technologies for our customers, because it is very important for them, because the solution is no longer behind their firewall, it is now beyond their firewall. So that's why when we're looking at, for example, the identity access management tools, we know that it is to help our customers to take an identity-based approach to security and establish truly conditional access policies. When we're looking at the application data security, which is a very broad topic, it is helping our customers protect their SAP and non-SAP applications and their SAP and non-SAP data as it moves around, both inside and outside the organizations. We're using technologies like IEE, MEC, media access control security for data link or point-to-point security encryption. So when the customer is on Azure, outside and inside Azure, everything is protected from encryption perspective. So from the network security side, we know that it is very important to establish secure connections to and within Azure using virtual networks, network security groups, VPN, express route, and any other technology that we have, like virtual WAN, for example, virtual wide area network connectivity. We know that protecting and making sure that availability of these apps and protection against the network layer threats is becoming important every day. And Microsoft has been leveraging different technologies and really unique technologies to make sure the network security is enabled, so that our customers can know that once they move to Azure, it is not going to be any porous connectivity to Azure data centers anymore. So they can they can actually rest assured on that. So they're not going to really need to worry about how the network security is going to be enabled, because Microsoft is going to be providing tools and then technologies. From the threat protection perspective, we know that our customers can secure their entire organizations from threats with Azure Sentinel, for example, which is a cloud native security information events management, also called SIEM. So which is scaling to the customer's needs and can be accessed from anywhere in the world. So security management is very important to assess the security state continuously. Our customers have been spending time, money to be able to make sure that the security management is optimized. So especially as cloud workloads change dynamically, security management is becoming really very difficult. In the same time, it is actually just becoming very time consuming. So what Microsoft does, from one example, that just a quick example on the security management, Azure Security Center is a tool, is a technology that is helping our customers monitor security state of their Azure resources and hybrid workloads. So just that unique example, the Security Center, it is providing dynamic security scorecard and all the recommendations to improve the customer security in a centralized console, making security management easier across different resources. So instead of the customer has different towers, they can enable technologies like the Azure Security Center to centralize it. And they get actually just advanced threat protection across many services like virtual machines, servers, apps, the databases, storage, containers on VMs. So these are all backed by Microsoft Intelligent Graph, which our customers are able to detect and respond to threats quickly across the services. It is the global view and approach which is being delivered to our customers when they move their SAP applications to Azure or even for the hybrid deployments. So at Microsoft, what we are doing is we are building our security solutions upon a key set of principles. These are moving from assumptions to explicit verification, adopting a policy-based least privilege access model, and designing with the assumptions that every element of the system can be breached. So this is actually the core of the zero trust security. We know that it can be breached. So what Microsoft does, the design which Microsoft actually just proposes along these solutions is actually within the assumption that every element of the system can be breached. So these are the key principles of the Zero Trust again. Zero Trust provides a modern security framework to manage the complexity of the today's organizations, which are leveraging SAP or non-SAP. A holistic approach to Zero Trust should extend throughout the entire digital estate. So it serves as an integrated security philosophy and end-to-end strategy. So what Microsoft can actually just recommend is that our customers can do this implementation by following the Zero Trust controls and technologies across 6 foundational elements, which are actually just shown in this diagram, which is number 1, identity. Identity, whether they represent people, services, or IoT devices, define the Zero Trust control plane. When an identity attempts to access a resource, we need to verify that identity with strong authentication, ensure that access is compliant and typical for that identity. It is following least privilege access principles. So what I just said is just the best practices. However, Microsoft has been providing custom solutions for the identity access management. If a customer needs certain elements, just like the MFA, for example, or the break glass account, or anything around it, how to create policies, how to create role-based access control, which is the resource control mechanism within Azure. So Microsoft Cloud Solution Architects, along with Microsoft certified partner ecosystem, we help our customers build this identity management model. So the best practices which I'm talking about is maybe 1 or 2% of the overall holistic Azure security from identity management perspective. What about the devices? So once an identity has been granted access to a resource, data can flow to a variety of different devices. So from IoT devices to smartphones, bring your own device to partner managed devices and on-premises workloads to cloud hosted servers. So this diversity is really creating a massive attack surface area, or is another reason for the bad actors to actually have bad intentions to go in and just infiltrate the Azure VNets or the virtual network where the VMs are located. So Microsoft treats that not anything separated from the identity aspect or identity component. So devices and identity is just becoming very intertwined. So then what is the whole reason why a bad actor will go inside Azure? So that will be the data. So ultimately, security teams are focused on protecting data across everywhere in the cloud or on the premises. So where possible, Microsoft says, or we recommend, the data should remain safe even if it leaves the device. So, or the application, SAP application, or the infrastructure, and the networks that the organizations control. Regardless, it needs to be protected across all these disciplines. So the data should be classified, labeled, and encrypted at all times. And access should be restricted based on those attributes. However, way too many options to actually just make it. Using ADEs, using TDEs, these are the terminologies which I am actually just going to be emphasizing if the time allows. But there are lots of ways to actually just give access to a certain individual and restrict a certain individual or the groups of computers or the VMs and apply restrictions on those. And then explicit and implicit access control mechanisms, for example. Varieties really just mount, and then our customers have different options, different models, different best practices. But one final thing which our customers really need to reach is the security. So the data security is very important. Microsoft gives our customers tools and functionalities to make this environment that their data secure, and also the best practices. So applications, SAP applications and APIs, very important for our customers. So we know that overall Microsoft sees applications and APIs provide the interface by which the data is consumed. It is actually just becoming very important for our customers to know that their application is actually the bridge to the data. So they may be legacy on premises, lift and shifted to cloud workloads, or modern software as a service applications. Controls and technologies should always be applied to discover shadow IT to ensure appropriate in-app permissions and gate access-based control mechanism and real-time analytics and monitoring for abnormal behavior and control mechanisms for user actions and validations for secure configuration options are all documented. So from the infrastructure perspective, infrastructure, whether on-premises servers or cloud-based VMs, containers or microservices, regardless what it is, it represents a critical threat vector. So assess for version, configuration, just-in-time access to hardened defense, using telemetry to detect attacks and anomalies and automatically block and flag risky behaviors and protective actions are some of the things that I can just say. But when we are looking at the overall infrastructure security, I am just going to show a few technology aspects with what Microsoft uses in this field to be able to give you better view on how Microsoft makes sure that the networking services really constitute the real security for the infrastructure, which is very important because once the customer moves or once you are moving your SAP applications to Azure, so then you want to know that it is actually on a secure and scalable infrastructure platform. And then the networks, of course. All data is ultimately accessed over network infrastructure. So networking controls can provide critical in-pipe controls to enhance visibility and help prevent attackers from moving laterally across the network. Laterally in the sense of north, south, west, east, all the movement can actually just be enabled there. So what we are saying is networks should be segmented, including deeper in network micro segmentation, which I am just going to be highlighting in the next slides. So then the real-time threat protection should be enabled. End-to-end encryption should be enabled. Monitoring should be there all times. SAP native monitoring tools, Microsoft monitoring, everything can actually just make the overall infrastructure monitoring more secure from not only from the infrastructure perspective, but also from the network side. Then the policy-driven access control mechanisms, which is the modern microsegmentation, is something that Microsoft treats very important and is actually something that Microsoft emphasizes because it is requiring that we get access-based, control mechanisms and locations, behavior patterns, data sensitivity, client applications, and device security. So this is the overall aspect of the Azure security, but again, this is like, very high level. Before I go to the next slides, I would like to ask you if you have any questions so far.
Yeah, I'm just thinking basically the whole security topic and for the customer is freaky when they go to the public cloud, so to say.
Absolutely.
Right? But actually, when you dig it a bit deeper, you realize that when you go to Microsoft Azure, you have typically you are much more secure than an average on-premise environment because simply they can't fulfill all those requirements. They don't have the knowledge, all the skill, and the tools as well. So typically it comes on the end like, okay, if you move to the cloud, public cloud, you're more secure in average than on-premise.
Exactly. And also one quick note, Goran, about what you have just said. It is very valid. It is actually very important. No entity or no company would want to spend $1 billion at least for security every year. So Microsoft does it.
Exactly.
So Microsoft spends $1 billion every year to make it more secure for our customers.
Exactly.
So when a customer moves to Azure, they adopt these technologies. So Microsoft Cloud Solution Architects like yourselves, myself, anybody that is actually working in this space, make sure our customers are getting best-in-class security. So then they can actually just augment their investment with Microsoft products, which I'm going to be actually just like, this is flow-wise, it is actually really helping your question and your comment. Because once we're looking at Azure, we're looking at networking services, and then we're looking at the overall connection, protection, deliver, and monitor all different segments. So when we're talking about Azure networking services, we're seeing products in these pillars which Microsoft never compromises, because protection is what we are trying to achieve for security. So before we drill down into the protect, we help our customers understand what is Azure Virtual Network concept? Because this is something is very important to know, because everything is just built inside that. So before I actually go into the firewalls and application gateways and all those niche technologies, what is network VNet or VNet virtual network? It is providing a logical, isolated, and secure network boundary inside Azure. So as more and more workloads start to get deployed in Azure virtual networks, enabling network connectivity across them starts to become challenging for our customers. So there are multiple options to address those challenges. These options include like virtual network, again, like virtual network peering, which is using VPN gateway between two virtual networks to connect them together. So as we are using VNets, there are many areas which Microsoft helps our customers. So one of the area is the VNet connectivity challenges. So to address common VNet connectivity challenges, a pattern has evolved over the years. So this pattern is referred as hub and spoke network topology in Azure. So what it does, hub and spoke network topology pattern bring in multiple benefits and simplifies network connectivity in Azure, so that ambiguous customer thought about moving to Azure or moving to public cloud is becoming very clear for them to understand, because Microsoft makes sure customers' on-premises network environment is going to be on Azure. The same concept we're going to be looking at, instead of the VLANs, we're going to be looking at the VNet. So we're going to be looking at inter-VNet connectivity. We're going to be looking at the NSGs for instance, for the connectivity between the subnets, which is going to be used for the multi-segmentation, which is going to be providing the layer 4 security principles for the customers. So again, we are creating this hub VNet, and then we're configuring this with VPN gateway to start it with. Then we are defining this VPN gateway subnets, then create a VPN client through certificates, which is all certified, and configure it with the VPN gateway. This is something that is very preliminary way of just explaining how we do this on Azure, or how we get the customer connected. Then what we do is we plan the design, and we are helping our customers assign a public IP address and a subnet. Then we go ahead and just create a production spoke VNet and assign subnets for application and database servers. So this is very simple from telling perspective. But when it comes to going into the details, like creating the VNets and then creating the address spaces, how we are doing the DNS control mechanisms, for example, customer really understands the core that is very, very strong in Azure. So they sometimes compare their own premises security to Azure security. They say, we didn't even know these technologies. We didn't even know that our environment was not as secure. So that this conversation that we have with our customers becomes very important, because while we are talking about security, we're addressing their needs on the networking. For example, here in this list, let's choose traffic manager. What is traffic manager? It is not only about just the DNS-based routing, it has security aspects as well, because we're going to be front-ending to Azure Application Gateway, which is layer 7, with traffic manager, which is going to provide the DNS-based routing, but also traffic manager is not going to necessarily just guarantee that geographic region is always going to be there, but Microsoft is going to update the map to actually just make sure that the geo mapping is going to be as accurate as possible, which is something Microsoft has been spending a lot of time, a lot of money, and then we are actually pioneering in this space. DNS-based routing, not only actually just leveraged by Azure Traffic Manager, but also Azure Front Door. For example, from the, let's say that I'm just picking this example is the Traffic Manager. Why is it important? It is using internal map, which Microsoft controls, to do the IP addresses to geographic region translation. So this map is validated and updated on an ongoing basis to increase its accuracy and account for the evolving nature of the internet. So Microsoft has been spending a lot of engineering efforts on that, so that nothing is missed, nothing is actually just compromised. So then we are looking at the Azure Front Door, for example. We are defining on-premises real IPs on Traffic Manager or Front Door to redirect or route the traffic back, so that when the customer wants to have a forced tunneling, if their requirement is to have the entire traffic come back to Azure and come back to on-premises, yes, we can define it. We can define it with UDRs. We can define it with the traffic manager or Azure front door, or we can even just go to the route server, for example, to even eliminate the need for the route to actually just make sure that our customers are really just getting best in class in technology to make sure that this is going to be enabled, the traffic back is going to be enabled using the Azure firewall, for example. So like the quad zero topic, which we are just defining on the Azure firewall management subnet and Azure subnet, Azure firewall subnet, we push the traffic back to on-premises. Everything is documented and everything is actually complying with the customer's requirements and giving additional security controls, such as using the Azure Application Gateway and also the firewall, and then letting the Azure Application Gateway get the first hit and then send it over to Azure Firewall to do the translation back to on-premise or back to VNet, where the customer's backend servers are located. So we got to, again, I'm going to go into this. I hope that the time allows. I'm going to be as quick as possible to cover this slide, and then I can give some examples. So Azure Load Balancer, what is it? It is actually not only about the traffic control, it is basically having the security aspects as well, as it is allowing our customers to do load balance services on multiple ports, multiple IP addresses, or both, which is very important. So you can use public and internal load balancer. So if the customer is really just looking at the public facing IP addresses, which is going to be coupled with the internal load balancer, which is going to be the use definitions so that they can use to load balance the flows across a set of VMs. There we actually just achieve the HA as well, because now we can actually just push it to the backend servers. So now if you actually just want to go ahead and just like, achieve DNS based, let's say the traffic control from HA perspective, then you can go ahead and just like, configure, you can have one single front end, and then you can configure the load balancer to use a load balancing rule with HA port with a single front end by setting the floating IP to enabled to achieve it. So there are lots of ways to actually just do that using Microsoft technology. Sometimes our customers are getting really just like, very confused how much Microsoft really just spends time and engineering and money on this to actually just achieve different and very complex customer scenarios. For example, the standard load balancer, the backend addresses used to be associated with the VM NICs before the standard load balancers. Now you can use the standard load balancer SKU, which is to use to load balance to achieve IP-based load balancing using PowerShell and CLI. So technologies which were not available before is now becoming available with Microsoft security products. And then this is something that I'm personally very proud of, that I have been spending my time just learning this never ending, never changing, never constantly just staying technologies. It's always just adding more and more to the portfolio. So DDoS standard, for instance, I'm just like, choosing from this diagram. Standard DDoS, what is it? When I'm saying actually DDoS standard, there's an option, DDoS standard and DDoS basic. DDoS standard is something, or the SKU that we are using for our enterprise grade customers, which is protecting all the resources deployed into the virtual network. So every subscription in every region under the same tenant, DDoS protection is implemented on the platform side for the storage service. So there's no need for customer to take care of the DDoS attack anymore. So if they want to protect the IaaS workloads to be protected based on their day-to-day network traffic, then they're just using the DDoS protection. It is using the dedicated monitoring and machine learning algorithms to configure the DDoS protection policies, which is to tune to the virtual network traffic profiles. So basically, when I actually just described about the virtual network, then how this is going to be helping our customers to protect the overall virtual network is starting with the DDoS, because it is providing the application SLA guarantee, which our customers really just, really needed. So it is providing the SLAs, it is providing the mitigation policies, which are tuned based on the customers' SAP application traffic volume, which we learn based on the machine learning technology. So basically, once a customer is looking at the Azure from the networking perspective, we are not necessarily just starting them with the Azure Firewall, Azure Application Gateway. We surround this VNet with the DDoS protection, so we can give them 45 terabit of security using Azure Application Gateway, which gives 22.5 megabit per second connection. And then we are leveraging Azure Firewall, for example, to open up more ports for layer 3, layer 4 security control mechanisms. So we're offering site-to-site and express route to extend the customer's network to Azure. So express route, as we know, that is a dedicated network connectivity, which is letting our customers create this private connections between Microsoft data centers and client premises. So express route connection does not go over the internet. It is the term used, underlay. It is not an overlay, it is an underlay technology. So multiple express route circuits from different peering locations or up to 4 connections from the same peering location can be connected to the same virtual network, which is to provide high availability in the case of, a requirement for circuit level SLA for the customers. So everything is from that perspective is something that Microsoft does from dedicated network connectivity perspective. So by default, our customers are leveraging IPsec. If they want to go ahead and just do like anything more than the IPsec, so we can provide them with the express route direct connectivity, which will give them IEE standard, which is going to be MACsec on the network traffic access control mechanism perspective using express route direct connectivity. So we usually get questions on, like when I'm actually talking to our customers, I'm getting questions on brute force attacks, for example. This is something they have been reading a lot about it. So brute force attacks are more often considered layer 7 attacks, not a lot of packets and seconds involved, but more so impacting the applications or SAP applications themselves. So in a lot of cases, they're just security nuisances and not actually impacting applications in any meaningful way. But by using dedicated network connectivity, by using the DDoS standard, for example, DDoS standard is living at the layer 3 or layer 4 level, where we have extremely high packets per seconds and not necessarily any application layer payloads. So what happens is our customers are asking, hey, I would like to get a protection for the brute force attacks. So what we are saying is when a client is reaching out to us, hey, they want to get the best-in-class security solutions for brute force attacks, for example. For lower packets and seconds attacks like brute force, we are using technologies like Azure Front Door WAF with source IP rate limiting or application gateway WAF. I'm going to be talking about those in detail. So if the customer is not looking for straight rate limiting or HTTP attacks, let's say that they're not looking at the rate limiting or HTTP attacks, or they don't have any concerns, is the usual go-to recommendation customers is to use the Azure Front Door with WAF functionality. Because DDoS, when a client is asking about it, it is more fitting in the for next level above the brute force. Because when the packets and seconds really ramp up, then we are going to be looking into thousands or tens of thousands or more packets per second, and it's becoming a layer 3 or layer 4 instead of layer 7. So now the question is, if the Azure Application Gateway going to be able to protect it? No. Why? Because Azure Application Gateway is going to be layer 3 security mechanisms for the customers. So what we're going to be suggesting is going to be, again, based on, I'm giving you this as an example, because every customer is going to have different requirements. If the brute force attacks are going to be there, so we're going to be leveraging the technology which is going to be provided by the DDoS, for example. If the customer is looking at an application like UDP, TCP plus, for example, Azure Application Gateway plus the DDoS on top of that is going to be the way to go. So this is just one example. Aside from this, some customers are looking at technologies like, I would like my branches to talk to each other without any interruptions, because it's very important branch-to-branch connectivity without exposure to the internet or without exposure to the public access. So we are offering Virtual WAN, which is the virtual wide area network connectivity, is a networking service which is providing optimized and automated branch connectivity to and through Azure backbone. So Azure regions serve as a hub so that you can choose to connect these branches to. So from protection perspective, we are using the same native technologies, just like the DDoS, Azure Firewall, Web Application Firewall, virtual network endpoints, and we're using technologies like the Virtual WAN to make sure the branch-to-branch connectivity is actually achieved. So again, these technologies are actually just used at a very granular level based on the customer's requirements. So when a customer is moving to Azure, it doesn't mean that they need to go in and just like, use the Virtual WAN, or they have to have the Azure Firewall in place. But what Microsoft does, we are giving our customers all the tools and functionalities so they can use these technologies. We help them understand what a denial of service is, which is typically accomplished by flooding the targeted machine or resource with fake or superfluous requests in the attempt to overload the systems and prevent some or legitimate requests from being fulfilled. But sometimes some customers not necessarily understanding these technologies or the threats, because denial of service attacks is not something they're familiar with. So when they come to Microsoft, upon reading, Microsoft assures them that we're using DDoS standard, which is something that we are even in the marketplace, that Microsoft is the only cloud provider today which is not charging our customers with anything like chargeback. During the DDoS attacks, there's going to be some kind of like communication, egress communication back to the server, but Microsoft is not charging our customers anything for that. Why? Because we make sure that our customers are secure. They're not going to worry about any of those egresses. It is not being just like incur any kind of expenses for the customers. So the CDN, for instance, CDN is just like a proxy, and customers are looking at it as not only about the networking, they're looking at it as like a security component as well, because we are delivering that in the edge to give clients better user experience and security when they deploy workloads such as like websites. So they understand the difference then between the front door and CDN. Front door, the service which is helping us define, manage, and monitor the global routing for the web traffic by optimizing for the best performance in instant global failover for high availability. So then customers are then asking again, like I said, Azure Traffic Manager is DNS based. So how are we going to be using it? We can actually just use these technologies to make sure that customer is getting their HA and DR requirements. For instance, Azure Application Gateway is a tool that we can only apply it in the region, not across regions, but we can use Traffic Manager to make sure we have one Azure Application Gateway in the prod, another one in the DR, and now we have the Traffic Manager to control it, or we have the Azure Front Door to control this traffic between Azure Application Gateways. So we do not have no answers to our customers. We make sure that our customers are getting the best-in-class networking tools and solutions to help them address their security and compliance requirements. And then again, like using the Azure load balancer, which is operating at the layer 4 of the OSI, Open Systems Interconnection. It is the single point of contact for clients. So customers can actually just like, scale their SAP applications and create high available services just using it. So from the perspective of the security, perspective of the networking, as you guys see, everything is actually just becoming very interconnected, because even load balancer itself is supporting both inbound and outbound scenarios. Standard load balancers, public IP addresses now support being moved across resource groups within the same subscription, which was not available before. So Microsoft has been spending really the best engineering for the last 4 or 5 years to make sure that this technology really addresses our customers' requirements. Even from the monitoring perspective, the network watcher, for instance, is providing all the tools to monitor, diagnose, view metrics, and enable logs for resources in an Azure virtual network to do the analysis on this traffic packet control. So then we are using the Azure Monitor, which is fantastic tool that we can now use it for SAP NetWeaver Stats, for example, to maximize the availability and the performance of these SAP applications and services by delivering a comprehensive solution for collecting, analyzing, and acting on telemetry from Azure and on premises. So it is basically helping clients to understand how their SAP applications are performing and proactively identifying issues affecting them, and then they can actually just see all those resources they depend on running these SAP applications. So again, this is something I am very excited about talking, but all these topics is very comprehensive. I'm gonna be very willing to actually just respond to any questions upon this, presentation to the community. If anybody wants to reach out and then ask specifically about these tools, they can reach out to us, they can reach out to myself, and I can definitely just help them with any of their questions. So as I mentioned in the previous slide, Azure Virtual Network is the concept which I actually just started building my talk, my speaking today. Is the fundamental building block for customers' private network in Azure. It's very important that we know that VNets enable many types of Azure resources, such as Azure virtual machines, so that they can securely communicate with each other. So when we're looking at how we are supporting this virtual network is not only on the DDoS. So we need to look at Azure Firewall, for example. Azure Firewall is a managed cloud-based network security service which is to protect the Azure Virtual Network resources, period. It is going to do that. It is a fully stateful firewall as a service with built-in high availability and unrestricted cloud scalability. So our customers can centrally create, enforce, and log applications and network connectivity policies across subscriptions and virtual networks so that they can use a static public IP address for the virtual network resources, allowing outside firewalls to identify the traffic originating from the virtual network. So with this statement, I am actually just answering the question of the egress control, because this is something the customers can definitely just use Azure Firewall to let the VM talk to the internet using the Azure Firewall. It is going to be the centralization of the entire traffic, which is generated inside the VNet. Because the service, Azure Firewall service, is fully integrated with Azure Monitor for logging and analytics. It is not going to be the only tool, but our customer is going to be able to really just use Azure Firewall to be able to just monitor the entire egress and ingress control mechanisms. So they can also just use technologies like the TLS inspection, IDPS, URL filtering, and web categories. These are all available with the Azure Firewall Premium SKU, for example, for all these SAP applications. Then we have the Azure Application Gateway, which is something we are using it with or without Azure Firewall. So it is a web traffic load balancer, enabling customers to manage the traffic to the web applications. So traditional load balancers operate at the transport layer 4, which is the TCP and UDP, the OSI layer. So, and then they route the traffic based on the source IP addresses and ports to a destination IP address and port. But Azure Application Gateway's difference is that it can make this routing decision based on the additional attributes of the HTTP request. For example, URI path or the host headers, I'm sorry. For example, when the customer wants to route the traffic based on the incoming URL, so you can just define that incoming URL path so that it is going to be application aware. So the bottom line, rule of thumb, Azure Application Gateway is going to be application aware. Load balancer is not going to be. Are we going to need to have Azure Application Gateway? If the traffic is going to require HTTPS traffic control mechanisms, yes, we are going to use Azure Application Gateway. Can we use alternative technologies? Like, let's say that third-party MVA as the load balancer? Absolutely, yes, we can. We can use Palo Alto's, FortiGate. We can use, F5. Anything certified on Azure can actually be used as well. In the same time, Azure native tools are also going to address all these needs. So the subnets and NSGs. is very connected for multi-segmentation, because the intent of the network security group rules are to provide for support and maintenance of the managed service components like the domain controllers, which are going to run the managed domain. So these aren't resources that customers can connect to directly. So it is restricted only to support personnel from the secure workstation. It's very important to use them, is because our customers factor in why you shouldn't deploy a resource to the same subnet where this network security group is applied for the managed components. So it should be noted that the rules that we are using for this, simplifying, allowing the traffic to flow, is defined. So even if the customer deployed their own VMs into the attached subnet, there's not going to be any inherent account on the own VMs that will grant access to the support person using a secure workstation. Okay. Is important not only from the segmentation perspective. Is there any questions?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's amazing that from one perspective, we are talking about something which is always a complex topic, and we are proving, and you are actually proving that we not just have an understanding on that complexity and how we are approaching to that very carefully from security perspective. I think it's also amazing that we have so many functionality and tools to apply all those rules and to help customer to create, in this case, better SAP on Azure landscapes and secure them much better than what they have currently.
Exactly.
Applying all those security topics, like that, and also applying some compliance. So, and I think it's amazing what you did here, that you cover in so short time all those tools, and I mean, and of course, we can see from your passion we can discuss about that days and days. I think it's amazing that we have such a huge portfolio of services there.
Exactly, Robert. And also, like our customers, when they reach out to Microsoft, we have very wide breadth of services around security and networking. Not every customer is going to be requiring the same tools. So what we do is we are doing this fantastic, like flawless assessments for our customers. When they reach out to us, when they ask our partners, and they come to Microsoft and they ask about their SLA requirements, Microsoft does not stop asking questions. So we are asking questions on security, data control, data protection requirements. So to make sure that our customers are really getting everything that they need from the hyperscaler, which is Microsoft Azure here. And like actually, the user-defined routes, for example.
Security discussion is always typically the first discussion which starts, in my experience. Yeah, absolutely.
And also, what I recommend our customers, it is very broad topic. Not every customer is actually just bringing in the security topic at the onset of the discussions, but they should be identifying their security requirements and their at the onset of engaging with Microsoft, so that our cloud solution architects can better understand, so we can use these technologies in order, like the user-defined routing, for example. The UDR is very significant update to Azure virtual networks, is this is allowing different customers, network admins, to control the routing tables between the subnets within a subnet, as well as between VNets. This is the reason it is allowing for greater control over network traffic flow, but not every customer is looking at this kind of multi-segmentation on the network filtering. So once we understand it, so that we make sure the hub and spoke configuration or any kind of point-to-site, site-to-site, or express route connectivity, and then how we're going to be using the IPsec over express route, for example, from security point of view, we can define this address spaces at first, and then we're not going to necessarily have difficulties in expansion of this VNet address spaces.
So I think it's amazing, as you mentioned. I mean, for a message to our community, as probably everybody seen so far, that you're full of passion regarding that topic, and it's amazing that we have you here. So I think it's a very nice overview for what we have there, and I think it's just a part of the complete, very complex networking and security topics. So I think it's a very nice overview, and probably we'll probably need to schedule another call where we have a much more deeper. For example, if we want to go in classical hub and spoke pros and cons for different options, so we will probably arrange with you another session where we can go much deeper in that topic.
Exactly.
So
this
I
topic,
think,
becoming very, very challenging to cover everything in one sitting, because Microsoft, when we're looking at $1 billion every year, Microsoft has been spending or just investing. The topic to cover this big investment in 1 hour is becoming a big challenge. I'm willing to cover it more. We can go, component by component. We can look at all these components that you see on the screen, for example, and there are even more on the ADEs and TDEs and how we are using the encryption, for example, how Azure Key Vault is integrated, what differences between customer managed keys and then Microsoft managed keys, the differences from management perspective, the security aspects of that, access control mechanisms, RBACs, identity access management, Azure Active Directory, and then using like Radius MFA, for example, some of the customers require it. Microsoft has the tools and technologies and solutions to deliver to our customers. So this is our promise.
And it's clear that we have content for 5 additional sessions. And I think
I think it is very, very nice closing words. Microsoft have tools for that. Yeah, so it's
exactly.
And I think for me, one of the really interesting things was when I started at Microsoft 4 years ago, and when I had these discussions with customers, there was always, can I go to the cloud from a security point of view? Is it secure enough and stuff like that? And I think what you showed us right now actually reflects very well what I sometimes now hear when I talk to customers, that they are saying, I go to the cloud because of security. So I exactly like what you outlined. The investments that I can do on premise are by far not so much as what Microsoft is doing in the cloud. So if I go to the cloud, I can benefit from all these different components that you were talking about in the previous slides. So I think also looking at the time, I think it's definitely worth to have one or more follow-up discussions with you.
I'm ready to do that.
Perfect. No, and I think exactly like what Robert said, I think it's very, very clear, it's very obvious that you have a lot of knowledge, that you really love what you're doing there, that you're very passionate about this. And I really think that we should schedule a few more meetings where we maybe pick some of these things and where we can also learn from your experience with other partners that you're interacting. So I think that's absolutely something that we should do.
I got a lot more to cover for anybody that wants to learn about SAP on Azure from networking and security perspective. And although that we cover five sessions, I'm so sure by the time that we come to the 5th session, we're gonna have another couple sessions to cover more, because by the time that I'm making this presentation, I'm using 2 monitors. My monitor on my right side, I am actually just looking at these updates on the Azure networking and security coming in. So that's why when I close my, with this presentation, I need to go and just do some reading and learn. So every cloud solution architect within Microsoft is learning these technologies to deliver the right solution for the customers. So
we'll create new Netflix, sessions.
Yeah. A Netflix show with you.
Netflix show, networking. Okay, I think it's very nice. I mean, it's more than nice overview of everything what we have there. I mean, it's amazing. All of us, I think we are recognizing those services, know what those services more or less on surface are doing. Yeah, but it's amazing, how deep every corner of that service is.
Exactly.
I mean, it's a complex topic, of course. Yeah, there's no simplification there because it cannot be simple. We need to be very careful what we are doing. Okay, Evren, I think
I would like to make, Robert, before we go, is everybody is here, SAP, focused. Is everybody now sees listening to this presentation? We are all passionate about the security. So, and then our customers can say it. Sure, Microsoft treats this very, very carefully. So we are not compromising on security. When a customer moves their SAP or non-SAP applications to Azure, they can set assured.
Oh,
that's a beautiful closing word, I would say.
exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah,
So Evren, as said, I think you have much more content, and you could definitely drill out into, I guess, all of these different topics.
Every one of them.
We will not do this today, but I think it's very clear that you have so much content that we should definitely invite you again to the podcast to maybe focus on a few of these topics and really drill down.
Absolutely.
So I think we will see each other again in the podcast. For now, thank you very, very much for joining.
Thank you so much.
It was really very informative. I think it was really great to see your passion, your enthusiasm to talk about these things. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, guys. I'm very, very happy to actually have presented today. Thank you.
Perfect.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Excellent.
And
Perfect.
see you next week again.
time.
Yep.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.